Namaste. My name is Chris Katranis. I'm going to be 62 years old at the end of this month, and I'm from the United States of America. I was in 2015, on July 23rd, diagnosed with a fatal case of carotid artery disease. And this is the story of how that fatal that fatal condition has been turned around for me through my journey in Ayurvedic medicine. I don't know exactly when my situation started, when my condition started, because my grandmother died when she was 54 of carotid artery disease back in the early 1900s. And my father died of the same thing when he was 72 in 1985. So I don't really know when my own condition started, but I can say that I think my lifestyle was probably a big contributor, and I think I got my lifestyle and my basic personality makeup from my dad, and he probably got it from his mom, and it wasn't very healthy. My diet was terrible. I never even thought about nutrition at all, and at the peak of my situation, I had been told by a doctor that I would probably die within 6 months because of my lifestyle. At that time, I was basically living on what we call in America peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day, and drinking about 40 cups of coffee, and also smoking 4 packs of Camel Straight cigarettes. And then every night I was putting myself to sleep with a bottle of whiskey. And my basic situation was that my blood pressure was 300 over 200 when they first looked at me. And I was told by my doctor that if I didn't clean myself up, I was going to end up probably dying within 6 months. I'm a military contractor, and my family has a business providing internet services to our troops in war zones. And at that time, I had been living in Iraq for about 5 years. I was living in Iraq for a total of 8 years. I did not die in 6 months. I did what my doctor told me to do, which at that point I wasn't in Ayurvedic medicine. This was just what my Western doctor told me to do. Well, actually he was Lebanese, and I was living in Lebanon, working in Iraq. And he told me basically that I had to get off of all meats, I had to stop drinking, and I had to stop smoking. And I did exactly what he told me to do, and that made a big difference. That's probably why I made it to the next step. Anyway, I went along, continuing with my work with a changed lifestyle at that point, up until around 2014, when I got some contracts in Qatar for our family, and then I went over there to manage the business. When we were building a large site, I noticed that I was getting a paralysis on the left side of my body. This would have been in very early, like the beginning of the middle of 2014, let's say like September or October of 2014. I started to notice that I was having trouble. Also, on my right eye, I went blind one day, and I remained blind for 10 days. The base doctor where I was working told me it was probably ultraviolet blinding. I found out later that it wasn't. Anyway, I continued to get worse and worse in my condition at that point. Not that I knew my condition was when this was going on, but eventually I lost all emotion completely. I couldn't feel couldn't process anything in terms of fear, in terms of danger, in terms of any of the normal instincts that people have. And I didn't really notice it because it was gradual. I lost my ability to have any kind of empathy for other people or for anybody's condition. And finally, in January of 2015, I started to go completely paralyzed on the left side of my body, probably 3 to 4 times a day for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. I went to the base doctor again. He said I probably should go back to the States. It was a pinched nerve, and I should get an x-ray. I went back to the States, and I talked to my doctor, my Western doctor, and they said that it couldn't possibly be a pinched nerve because my paralysis was starting at the top of my head and going all the way to the tip of my toes. And it was only on the left side of my body. So they said if it was a pinched nerve, it wouldn't be above my neck. It had to be some sort of brain problem. And I needed to go in for an MRI. In May of 2015, I went in for my first MRI, And they didn't see me, the neurologist didn't see me until July of 23rd of 2015. And when he saw me, he gave me the bad news that I told you about when I started this video. He told me that I had a serious and final stage of carotid artery disease, that both of my right arteries, my right carotid arteries were entirely blocked, 100% blocked. And he wanted to send me in for some more tests, but the way it looked was I was again diagnosed as terminal with a fatal condition of carotid artery disease, total blockage without any hope of living much more than 3 months. But they wanted to confirm that by sending me for some CAT scans and then an MRA. So I went in for further tests. I went into for 2 CAT scans. I went in for an MRA. All the tests confirmed the doctor's original prognosis, that I had this fatal condition, that I was going to die within a few months, and that I had to start getting my things together and closing down my operations overseas and getting myself back home. And that was in July 23rd that was on July 20th. I remember because it was my anniversary, and my wife went with me to the meeting, and in a way it was kind of a relief to know that what was going on was what was happening, because I had felt all these weird things happening, like me losing my feelings, losing my emotions. I felt I had this paralysis going. So at least I knew what was happening, and I didn't really feel too bad about the fact that I was diagnosed as dying. And I decided basically I was just going to accept it and go along with life, with what life gave me, and that's what I did. And so I ended up not really living too carefully or working too hard in my nutrition. I'd pretty much given up at this point. I started drinking again. I was going out every night, dancing, visiting my daughters around the world, my kids, because I have 9 children, 6 daughters and three sons, and so they're scattered all over the place. I was visiting them and just basically having fun, waiting to die. And in September of 2016, almost a year after they told me this prognosis where I was going to die in 3 months, and they just kept putting me on more and more Western medicine, my ankles were swollen up like watermelons, and my basic appearance was terrible. I thought that I looked pretty bad, but I didn't really care because I didn't really have much time to go. Anyway, the time just kept dragging on. As I said, it was September of 2016 before I ever heard anything about Ayurvedic medicine. When I was visiting my daughter one night, we were out in Berlin. We were singing karaoke all night, and then we were also drinking heavily, and she told me at the end of the night, "Daddy, maybe tomorrow you can come see my Ayurvedic doctor. She's helped me a lot. I had a skin problem when I came here to Berlin, and her name's Moksha Hollander, and if you come with me tomorrow, maybe she has a different opinion than your other doctors." Well, I didn't expect anything, but she's my daughter, so I said, "Okay, honey, I'll do that." The next morning, of course, we'd been out pretty late that night. We weren't in very good condition, but the next morning we went to go see Moksha Hollander, the Ayurvedic doctor with the Ayushakti clinics in Berlin. And she took my pulse, and she looked at me and she said, "You're a mess. I mean, your liver's a disaster, you have no circulation, and you basically have, what's your story?" So I told her what happened. I told her I had been diagnosed with this carotid artery disease a year or so before, and they told me I was going to die any day, and I basically had been living like a crazy man for the next year. And my daughter said to me, Moksha told me that she could turn the situation around for me in 4.5 months, but I had to do exactly what she told me to do. And if I could stay the course and do what she told me to do for 4.5 months, well, actually she said 3 months, it turned into 4.5 months because it was over Christmas. I took another month. She said if I could stay the course, they would send me to India to the Ayurvedic clinic in Mumbai, and when I got there, they would give me my marching orders. They would tell me exactly what I would have to do in order to change this thing, or turn this thing around. So in my meeting with Moksha Hollander in Berlin, and she told me that if I did these things that she wanted me to do, and I succeeded at that, and I stayed on course, that I could come to Mumbai and see the Ayurvedic clinic here. They didn't tell me anything about it. She just told me it was a detox, and they were going to give me my marching orders when I got here. And she told me I had to do 3 things. Every morning I had to have just a green smoothie for breakfast. Every afternoon for lunch, just rice and steamed vegetables. And finally for dinner, no dinner, just warm goat's milk to try and heal my liver. And if I could do these 3 things for the next 3 months, then I should check in. She checked with me once a month, but I would get a reservation to go to get the detox, which they call a panchkarma, in Mumbai. And I did exactly what she told me to do, and I felt really much better at the end of it. And at the end of this, I still stayed on all my Western medications, so I still had a lot of swelling, and I still had a lot of other issues from the side effects from the Western medication. I was on 5 of them at the time. And when I came to Mumbai, I was examined by Dr. Smita Naram, and she again confirmed what Moksha said. She said that I could be okay in about 2 to 3 years if I would just do what they discovered I needed to do when they started my treatments. And then I started daily treatments with Dr. Mita at the Ayushakti clinic in Mumbai. And that was in the middle of January of 2017 that I finally I came to my first panchkarma clinic. And the treatment there was very odd to me. I had absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I really don't know what I'm doing still. I just do what they tell me to do. And they basically said that if I just did this procedure, follow these procedures, they would get all the toxins out of my system. They would level off my I guess they're called doshas, but I don't know. I'm not an expert in this Ayurshakti stuff, but Ayurvedic stuff. But if I could just get my system to balance out, and they would give me some herbal medications to help me with my circulation, and I stuck on that and stayed a vegetarian, that over a period of time, it could take up to 3 years, that my carotid arteries would start to clear up, and then I would get blood back to the right side of my brain. Oh, incidentally, I didn't mention that in my original diagnosis, they told me at that time that I had 200 TIA strokes. Those are small strokes where you have a little capillary burst in your brain and it does brain damage. 200 of those and 5 major killer strokes. And the one stroke that I had that I thought that was ultraviolet blinding was actually an eye stroke where I had popped a blood vessel in my retina and I lost my ability to see for 10 days. Of course, I'm backtracking now from the beginning of my story, but those were proven by my MRI. And of course, when I got to the Ayurshakti clinic in Mumbai, they confirmed that I had had some serious problems and there were issues in my brain. And they told me that these things that I was doing would help restore my blood flow to my brain. So I started and I proceeded to do exactly what they told me to do through the first Ayurshakti clinic. I dropped like 38 pounds of organ fat, and I also lost all the swelling in my body, and I got off a couple of my medications. To this day, I'm still on my blood pressure medication and my blood thinner, but all the other ones that they threw on during the course of my time of waiting to die over in America, they've eliminated. So I'm only on 2 medications out of the 5 original ones. And I've been feeling better all the time. So I continued to go through the first year. Now I remember it's 3 years program for my recovery. And at the end of my first year, they said, it looks like you're getting some circulation back to your brain again, but we need to have you check it when you get back to America. So I went back to America, and my Western doctor, after I finished my first panchkarma clinic, examined me, and he said to me, I don't know what to make of this. So as far as we can tell, there's absolutely no sign that you've ever had a stroke. We know you've had over 200, and we don't see any indication that you've ever had a stroke at all at this point. And they were examining my reflexes on the right and left side of my body. They were examining the way my facial muscles, made expressions on my face on the right and the left side of my body. And there was absolutely no difference that they could tell. And he's a professional neurologist. And of course, he could see all those things before when he examined me a year before. And the times before I went to the clinic, before I came to Mumbai. So he said, as far as we can tell, we don't even need to see you anymore. I said, okay, but I need you to give me an MRI again so that we confirm that these things are really happening. He said, okay, we'll take care of it. Well, they never did an MRI. I never got another appointment with that doctor. He kept canceling. He never made an appointment for an MRI for me. And this went on for the whole year. Finally, the second year came up. I stayed the course through the first year, stayed on the Ayurvedic the Ayurvedic diet that the doctors had given me in Mumbai, and I continued to do the herbs every day. And I basically did what they said, and when I got back the second year, I still didn't know what I was doing. I still don't really know either. But I started my second panchkarma clinic, and at the beginning they asked me for my new MRI that I got, and I said I never got one. So they sent me across the street to do a complete MRI of my brain, a complete brain scan, and a complete scan of my neck to look at my carotid arteries. And by golly, one of my two carotid arteries was cleared, and I was able, and they were able to see blood flow again to the cranial artery, the artery that brings blood to the right side of my brain. So during that course of the year, I don't know exactly when it happened, somehow one of the two carotid arteries that were completely blocked opened up and started flowing blood again to the right side of my brain for, who knows, maybe the first time in 10 years. And I started to feel again. I started to feel feelings again, process feelings. I started to have a little empathy again. These things were kind of an adjustment. You know, when you spend a couple of years without having any emotion, and all of a sudden they start to hit you, of course there's an adjustment period, because mastering your emotions is not that easy to do. And when it all hits you, like a little bit of it comes back after not having anything for a few years, it's a big adjustment. I can remember crying when I saw the moon one time. I mean, little things like that. I've never been afraid of flying before, and now I'm afraid of. I've been afraid of flying. I mean, not seriously afraid. I still fly all the time. But these are things that I think that are happening because there's blood flow getting to the right side of my brain again. I think. So anyway, I've been diagnosed now. It has been downgraded from a completely fatal 100% blockage to a slow flow recovery. And that's a huge, huge change. And I can say that probably the biggest thing that's happened to me through Ayurvedic medicine is I went from a man who was living day to day, believing I was going to die, and each day was going to be my last day, to a man who's on a recovery program for 3 years. So I'm a big believer in what we're doing here, although I don't understand it. And I'm very thankful for all the help I've gotten from the whole staff at Ayushakti. I want to say thank you again to my daughter for bringing me to see Moksha Hollander. And I want to thank Dr. Mita for her kind care, and Dr. Smita for all the time that she spent with me, encouraging me and keeping me on the right track. And now I can eat fish 4 times a week if I want to, which is great. So I'm very thankful for everybody who's been helping me, and I hope this message means something to somebody out there, maybe somebody who has the same kind of condition that I have, this carotid artery disease, or has suffered from a stroke. There's hope. You don't have to give up. Thank you.